Welcome to the Equine Vet Connect podcast. I'm your host, Dan Carter. I'm a veterinarian and a farrier. The goal of this podcast is to educate horse people, break things down, bust myths, and keep it real. Speaking of breaking things down, here's my legal disclaimer to keep my attorney and insurance company happy. While I am a vet, I may not be your vet. Contact them before trying anything you hear on this podcast. Remember, just because you watched it on YouTube or heard it on a podcast does not mean you can do it. Please use common sense. Welcome back to the Equine Vet Connect podcast here at Countryside Equine Hospital. Thank you everybody for joining us today. We've got two guests with us from Hallway Feeds. We've got Morgan and Doreen. How are y'all doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
Good. So Doreen, you're in our you're a sales rep in our local area. We're Hallway, correct?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. And Morgan, you're kind of like the big cheese in charge of.
If you could say that.
Yeah, you're in charge of everybody,
yeah,
right?
Yep. I am at our home office in Lexington, Kentucky,
Awesome.
and I visit with all of our sales reps and kind of lead them and guide them in their journey with Hallway Feeds.
I tell everybody, if you get a chance and you're in Lexington, you ought to drop by and see them because it's a really cool operation.
Yeah, we welcome tours all the time.
That's
Our
awesome.
doors are open for anybody who can stop in at any moment.
Because that's one of the really cool things. I remember when I was in Lexington working up there, I would see all the farms.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, y'all are out there. You're weighing yearlings. I mean, you're looking at horses. I mean, y'all aren't just producing feed.
Mm-hmm.
You are heavily involved in the industry.
We are. We have even a full-time employee who's dedicated to doing all the weighing program. She's been with us, I'd say 8 years now. And previously, her mentor who worked for us, he was with us around 30 years.
Oh,
and so the amount of data that we have on thoroughbred brood mares, weanlings, and yearlings is quite extensive.
That's really cool. Data is. I'm a data nerd. Mm-hmm. I love numbers, love data. So to hear that y'all are doing that, it's really cool.
We've gone into working with some of the warm blood breeding operations
Okay.
In Lexington and trying to gather the same data set. Obviously, there's not near as many being put on the
Right.
ground every year, but we're getting there.
That's awesome. Well, today we want to dive in for all our listeners out there. If you remember episode 2, we sort of dove into different metabolic syndromes. We're talking about PPID, formerly known as Cushing's. We talked about insulin resistance and equine metabolic syndrome in that episode. A question that we get a lot is, how do we feed horses that have one of these three conditions? And so that's kind of what we want to dive into today is what's the nutrition management around this? Let's start with the one everybody talks about, and that's going to be insulin resistance. Mm-hmm. So this is where these horses, most of the time, they're overweight. When you check their insulin levels, they are anything north of 35. We usually call insulin resistant, mm-hmm. and these are horses that definitely have major feeding concerns because our risk of laminitis when that insulin level gets up, it's extreme. So let's talk a little about what y'all look for to help identify these horses, and then also like different feeding strategies that can help people that have them manage through this.
Mm-hmm. I know personally when we're working with our customers, they come from two different avenues. Either one, we've been out in the field, Doreen, some of our reps, mm-hmm. Working with customers, recognizing there's a problem, or we're getting our customers through our veterinarians who are referrals and looking for help on how to feed these animals. Mm-hmm. Personally, when we start, we take a step back and look at what they've been doing historically, how they've been feeding these animals, what ways can we change, what ways can we improve, mm-hmm. and working with the veterinarians on their diagnosis, what they're seeing, and how we can help. Majority of them have already recognized that there's a problem. Right. These overweight animals. Many of them jump to the conclusion of looking, let's find the lowest starch product we can find, mm-hmm. and not necessarily paying attention as to how that product is formulated.
Right.
Many formulas you'll see in a complete feed that's a 10% or lower NSC. A lot of them are formulated to feed at around a 6+ pound per day feeding rate. Mm-hmm. And these insulin-resistant horses generally aren't consuming that much of a feed.
Well, that's a good point to bring up because when we get really highly focused on starch, we start to forget about these other nutrients. You mm-hmm. got what we call macronutrients and you got micronutrients. Mm-hmm. And so you've got to still make sure that you're supplying the necessary protein or amino acids these animals need and making sure you're also getting the carbohydrates under control. And so one of the things I talk a lot about is volume mm-hmm. versus percentage. So I like to talk about, I'm kind of heavy, so obviously I like to eat, So one of the things I always I like to say is like, you can still have some pie, but maybe not as much.
Yeah.
But then there's other things like salads you can eat a lot of, I guess. I like pie better. But
you got to get a little bit of your greens in there,
exactly.
though,
I'll eat a little salad, but that pie is so much better.
Yeah.
So you gotta pay attention to all those things when you're designing these diets, and that's one of the things that I often talk to people about is not just quantity, but also or not just percentages, but also quantity. Because if you're feeding, maybe that if you're feeding the lower carbohydrate diet, but you're not feeding enough of it, you're also missing these other nutrients.
All of your vitamins, your minerals,
Right.
that are going to help the body function properly.
Right.
So we have, I always say, when you're looking at feed, we've got a ration balancer.
Mm-hmm.
Your NSC in our ration balancer is slightly higher than our lowest sugar and starch feed, but you're only going to feed 2 pounds of it a day.
Right.
So you've got to look at the overall grams of carbohydrates per meal versus the non-structural carbohydrates of the diet or of the product that you're feeding.
Mm-hmm.
You take the ration balancer, I always say, in 6 pounds of fiber energy, which is our low sugar and starch feed, 2 pounds of that is going to be STAM 30.
Okay.
So we start all of our feeds off with STAM 30 and add the other ingredients in to design whatever product we're making, whether it be fiber energy, the low sugar and starch feed for these metabolic type horses that need calories, some of your Cushing's type animals, or we have 2 pounds of STAM 30 in our race 13, which is going to feed race horses, horses that are consuming large quantities. But we still start all of them off with that ration balancer.
That's really interesting because I always say that when I balance diets, I almost do it inverse of a lot of people. I actually start with a ration balancer, and let's get our proteins, vitamins, and minerals out of the way. And then all we're looking at is carbohydrate, keeping things simple. Well, y'all are basically starting there as well, it sounds like.
Yes. It's funny you mentioned a pie, because
Right.
we always show people kind of their diet as a pie. The center of your pie is your ration balancer, and all the different layers or the different flavors would be your
Makes
different
sense.
ingredients that you're adding. So if you just take, a slice of that pie, you're not getting all the good stuff that you need.
That makes a lot of sense.
So
we're talking about, let's take a little bit of a segue here, and let's talk about ration balancers, because this is a very common thing, or it's becoming more of a common thing. Like your STAM 30 product, and we're talking about ration balancers. What are we looking at there? What are people getting when they feed a ration balancer? Kind of what's the breakdown of that?
I mean, in your ration balancer, you're going to have your protein, your vitamins, your minerals, your amino acids, maybe any other additive that we have found to be beneficial for the animal. We have an ingredient in it called BMC, which is a seaweed-derived calcium that helps buffer the pH in the stomach and the hindgut,
Right.
and increase bone density in horses in training. That's an ingredient that we worked on with Kentucky Equine Research that's got the science behind it. Something that we feel is beneficial to these animals, especially those that are in training, horses that are being worked extensively. It's going to help in their overall health. We also have an ingredient with Aspergillus oryzae, which helps with fiber digestion.
Okay.
So in those ration balancers, that's the goods of the feed is
Right.
all in there. That's where your benefits are.
So if you were looking at, let's say, like your fiber energy feed, if we're like, or let's back up. Let's talk about if you were feeding a horse that, let's say I called you up and say, hey, I've got an insulin resistant horse. We got a high body condition score. We're pushing up 7, 8. We're insulin resistant. This insulin's pushing way north of 30. Let's say we're worst case scenario, we're hitting like 100. What are we looking at here? What's kind of your ideal plan? Let's say on a normal, we'll just go with 1,000-pound horse.
Yeah.
Like, what are we looking at there?
I start with their forage also.
Right.
Looking at what are they doing for their hay. When you have horses like this, I always recommend testing their hay to see if they can get a consistent source of it.
Right.
So if your hay guy is getting a new source every single week,
Not worth it.
it's not necessarily going to work for them. But if they do have that consistent source, let's start with their hay. Let's get our hay tested. Let's see where we're starting with this. People also initially want to get a really poor quality forage because they think it's just filler. I'm not always down.
No.
I'm not always on the same playing field as that. I still think feeding a quality forage is essential. Now, do we need to go get the best, highest quality alfalfa we can find?
Probably not.
Probably not. I'm not a proponent of alfalfa. I love alfalfa in a diet. But for these animals, it might not be your best choice. So finding a decent quality grass hay, if we could test it, great. Depending on where they're at on their scales, sometimes I recommend soaking hay to remove some more of it off if it's a very severe case. You have to make sure that you soak it for at least 30 minutes and pour the water off.
Yes. Because that's where all the sugar's
That's
in.
where all the sugar's in.
If
So
you give them the water.
I've seen folks where they're like, well, I soaked it. And I was like, but you didn't take it out of the tub.
Take it out. Maybe do a quick rinse on it.
So you got to make sure you remove that water. Breaking their feeding times, as many small meals as you can with these guys so you can spread it out.
Right.
And then we come in with a ration balancer, depending on what we're looking at with the animal. So in minimum of 1.5% of their body weight per day in hay.
Right.
So that might take more management, whether it be with hay pillow, with hay nets, smaller meals per day. There's so many different slow feeding options out there available now for these horses.
You know, that's something we talk about all the time is people focus all the time on feed, and nobody thinks about the hay.
And they eat way more hay than they do.
Way more.
feed.
Or they should.
They should.
They should.
Yes,
They should.
And in pasture management, thinking with some
Yes.
of these animals as well, and getting them into a dry lot if possible. And I know dry lots aren't always possible in some areas.
Yeah, sometimes they're not. Like I've always said, this is if you look at horses in general, especially when we're talking about these metabolic conditions, we've ended up with the perfect storm, right? We have had grass geneticists breeding grass to be the higher and higher quality as it can, and we've also been selecting for horses to go more miles per pound of feed over the years because that was transportation years ago. So we've got 100 years of selections for really great grass, and really great horses are very fuel efficient. And now they have converged, and the amount of exercise they get has precipitously dropped. So it's been a perfect storm for this
And you
to
bring
happen.
up a good point. What folks might think is an intensive workload on a horse is generally not.
No, I played cowboy out west for a long time, and I can tell you when you step on them at 8 o'clock in the morning. Well, sometimes we were stepping on 4:30 in the morning to go get the horses, so we could go to work that day.
Yep.
And you're stepping on at 8 o'clock in the morning, and other than a little break about lunchtime, they literally went all day.
All day.
That was a normal day for our horses.
Yeah.
And guess what? They could eat all the straight alfalfa they wanted
Yeah.
to eat.
They needed to.
Yes,
They
I
needed
mean
to.
they had to have it. So
Big difference from the hour workout or so.
Right.
Most
And
of the
it-
sport horses get.
And it's probably not an hour most times, I'd say.
Yeah.
Right. That's solid. Not like
Majority
the
of
others
it.
are doing.
Not intense.
So you bring up great points like testing hay. If there's a way that people can store, I would say if you got one of these horses, if you can buy in bulk somehow so we can test, get several months. I wish all hay was sold with the test. Like I say every day, there ought to be like a base price for hay, and then depending on how it tests, it could go up or down from there. But starting with, the right forage. In some cases it'll be high quality for looking performance animals, but for dealing with insulin resistance, it's not that you necessarily want poor quality. You just want something that's lower in NSCs. And we should probably explain that. That's NSCs are a term we throw around, but that's non-structural carbohydrates.
That's your starch and sugar combined
Right.
into one.
So when you look on that feed bag, if they didn't have NSC, if you can see starch and you can see sugars, you add the two together and we have NSC. So NSCs are what we're trying to minimize. What's your goal range? Like if you had an ideal range, total diet?
Overall, less than 12%.
Less than 12. And that's total diet.
Total diet, your forage and your feed.
Yes.
So
So if your forage is like 9%, you can
got
have
a
a
little
little
bit more
extra,
wiggle room.
right? But if it's already sitting at 12,
Yeah.
we got a tougher number to hit.
and again, it's managing those meals per day.
Let's talk about that because that's something I think gets forgotten. Is about maybe more than one or two feedings a day.
Yeah.
Let's talk about that.
Those horses' stomachs are very small. I mean, we always recommend nothing more than 5 pounds per meal.
Right.
Their stomachs, I mean, you operate on, you see
I
them.
scoped a lot of them. It's
Scope
not
'em,
near as
see
big
what's
as you
on 'em.
think.
Yeah, they're not near. You see these large animals, and you think, why, by golly, I can put as much feed in front of them, and they're basically like little hogs, and they'll keep consuming and eating their feed until it's gone.
Right.
Most of them, anyway. And so by minimizing, that 1.5% of their body weight per day, they're forage animals. Like
Right.
you said, these animals were designed to be consuming small forages out on the range, little bits at a time, and having to walk and get a little bit more, and having to walk and get a little bit more. And now we can either confine them to a stall where we're putting all their forage in one spot, and they don't have to go anywhere. They put their head down and they eat.
Right.
Or we have them out in grass pastures where they can walk around and get an abundance of delicious grass and
Well-manicured.
well-manicured golf courses. For years,
Well designed.
for years, we spent time in Lexington trying to convince these farms to stop mowing.
Right.
We said, just let it grow up a little bit more. They're having issues with overweight mares, seeing a lot of OCD issues, laminitic issues. We're like, stop manicuring. Yeah, you don't need to, it doesn't need to look like a golf course.
I talk about that a lot is, I call it my windshield test. If you're looking at hay, if you want to know if it's lower than NSCs, how many seed heads does it have on it? Because once grass goes to seed, the amount of non-structural as a general rule,
It's gonna
is going to decrease the amount of non-structural. And same thing for your pasture.
your fiber increases,
Right.
your sugar is gonna decrease.
Because the thing I try to remind people is fiber makes things rigid. It can stand up with fiber. If you're just trying to stack starches, well, it just falls over and flops. And so having that taller grass can actually reduce the amount of carbohydrate that's in, or non-structural carbohydrate in it.
Yeah, it's very true, and it's sometimes hard for those, especially where we're at in Lexington, where our hometown is. We're everywhere
Yeah,
now,
we're-
but
Right.
at our home base, you just drive around and see these beautiful farms with green grass everywhere,
Oh, yeah.
perfectly manicured, and it's hard, especially, we say maybe your paddocks that are in the back and maybe not on the road frontage, let those grow up a little bit more. I understand it's somewhat of the eye appeal that you have to keep to give it that feel.
Yeah, because I can remember there was a big trend, if we go back a few years ago, where it's like keep your pastures cut and mowed and cut and mowed so the grass is shorter. Oh, they can eat some short grass.
Yeah, there's a lot of sugar in that short grass.
So that taller grasses, that's a great place to start. Is let your pastures grow up. My wife always gets mad when I let mine get out of hand, but I was like, no, it's important.
I swear,
It's not
a
because
good
you don't have
thing.
time.
No, it's not that at all.
It's good. It's healthier.
Yeah.
I promise.
That's it.
I did it by design.
Yeah, my favorite thing though is to go out and mow a pasture because it's quiet.
Right.
So
Zen.
I can't hear my phone.
no, that's great.
Yeah.
So-
Being with those pastures too, we kind of got off topic with these animals and muzzles.
Muzzles, yes.
Muzzles. I mean, I know some folks have a hesitancy of using muzzles, but it's really doing those animals a favor. However, I have seen, and there has been research done, that it was a group of ponies that they have learned how to consume the same amount of grass
Really?
with muzzles on, because they realized
It would be.
they're very
ponies.
efficient at figuring out how to get around and eat the same amount.
It
with
does
those
not
muzzles.
surprise me at all that ponies figured
Yes.
out how to
Right,
do
ponies,
this.
yeah.
If somebody's going to figure it out, it'd be a pony.
Right.
Or you'll find we've worked with folks in their muzzles. They've got muzzles on, but when they pick their head up, they have worn out
Like
the
a big
whole
hole.
center of the muzzle.
I've had them go in and
Gotta-
actually cut
Yeah.
the hole in the muzzle. Like, well, he just didn't look like he was getting enough.
Oh my
Oh
gosh.
no! Oh
No, that's what we're supposed to do.
Exactly.
Don't cut the hole in the muzzle.
no! That's funny. I haven't come across that yet.
Oh, I have definitely come across that
That's
more than
funny.
once.
Or they take it off. There's
Yeah.
so many
Yeah.
different types of muzzles too now.
Oh, yeah.
Um,
Well, and I think it's important to talk about, like when you hear us talk about these multiple meals a day, when we hear us talk about the muzzles, is you're trying to minimize that carbohydrate intake. And what I like to call is you want to flatten the curve.
Correct.
And get rid of the spikes. So if you think I always think about Thanksgiving, right? You eat that big meal and everybody goes and takes a nap. It's not the turkey, because I've tried this one night eating turkey and I still want a nap. But it's that huge spike, like you've just flooded your body with a lot of
all
glucose.
your energy is going to your belly.
Right, and it's this huge spike in insulin to overcome that. and then you crash afterwards. If you can take those meals and you can spread them so that your curve is not just, you don't have these spikes in the day, but you just have gentle curves. And that in my opinion, that really helps with these insulin dysregulation, is to flatten that curve.
Yeah, and that's our goal on our side of feeding, is trying to help these folks minimize those curves.
Because if you've got, if you were to break up the same feeding, let's say you're going to feed that same 1% of body weight, so are we talking 5, 8,
15 pounds.
I'm doing math right here. I'm trying to think. Let's say 10 pounds of grain a day. Let's say,
100.
if we're trying to feed that same amount, if you break that up into 4 or 5 meals, it's going to be a lot better for that horse than 2 twice a day.
And they actually have better feed efficiency.
Yes.
They're going to utilize what you put in them a lot more effectively. Again, these animals, some of them, not all of our metabolic and insulin dysregulated animals, but just on feeding as a whole,
Right.
go back to that stomach is 5 pounds per day. So if you do have some of these horses that you are trying to put weight on, if you're pushing 6, 8, 10 pounds per meal, a lot of it is getting pushed through the system without being properly digested, and that's where you're going to start running into all other sorts of issues. So minimizing feeding at those small feeding rates so that they can utilize what you're feeding them, it's actually going to save you money in the long run.
That's a great subject. I hadn't really thought about that till now. I mean, I've thought about it, but I never thought about talking about it till now. But the goal is any of the carbohydrates that are in that feed gets absorbed by the small intestine. But if you flood it, it's going to bypass through into the colon, and now you're going to ferment it.
Yeah,
That's not where you want it.
And that's not a great use
that's a
of your
whole.
that's a whole nother
That's
can
a whole
of
topic
worms.
of
See, I was a ruminant guy. I studied ruminant nutrition, so fermentation kinetics. That's
You're great on
oh,
it.
I'm like, that's my jam now. I can talk fermentation kinetics.
Yeah.
So like that's a great point too. Just in normal feeding is those smaller meals.
Yeah, because on a farm, they're generally going to have maybe, depending on the number of animals, you're going to have some that are going to have some metabolic insulin dysregulation type issues. And you're going to have some that are normal, healthy animals, and maybe a handful that we're having to push more feed to. So having to figure out how to manage all 3 different types of animals can sometimes be overwhelming for folks.
Right.
And kind of get over their head. We have some that want to come in and I just want one feed to feed everybody. It's not always the case. We might be able to pick 2 feeds and figure out how to tailor it to meet all their needs. But one feed that's going to feed everybody across the board, fit all their micronutrients requirements, and keep them thin or add weight to them, it's not always possible.
I mean, it's just like 2 different people. I mean, I watch my 2 boys eat, and I'd give anything to have that kind of metabolism.
Yeah.
Right? Very different.
I got an almost 15-year-old, and I swear I just shovel food
Eating.
at him. He's
Can't eat enough, I'm sure.
no, and he's tiny. I mean, he's like the size of that microphone stand. But
It's like feeding a thoroughbred.
it's like feeding a thoroughbred. And me, if it tastes good, I better spit it out. That's what I've learned. So
We like feeding thoroughbreds. They like to, especially racehorses, they eat a lot of feed.
they eat a lot of feed.
Yeah.
They eat, but they're burning. a lot of
Their caloric requirements, now that's intense.
Yes.
Their workouts probably.
Yes.
Those are your
a lot
intense
more than the
animals.
Intense workout.
So let's kind of, we talked a little bit about insulin resistance. Let's talk about another one that comes up a lot, and this is going to be an interesting topic. We start talking about Cushing's horses, or what's now known as PPID, pituitary pars intermediate dysfunction, dysplasia, dystrophy, whatever you want to call it this week. Just make up a word for the D. But these horses have a completely different set of nutritional demands, or nutritional needs, I would say, and they can vary quite a bit.
They
'Cause
can.
sometimes you can have PPI. Let's talk about just pure PPID. They have that no insulin dysregulation, no metabolic syndrome, pure PPID. Let's talk a little bit about your take on what's important feeding those guys.
Working with folks, it's either sometimes you have the PPID with the insulin dysregulation,
Right.
and we have to kind of always check that route first.
We're going to segue over
We're
there.
going to segue. Say, hey,
Yeah, we're gonna, now let's throw this one in, because they can have more than one.
But they can have more than one, and am I going to go crazy on feed it like a racehorse type feed? No, we still manage those animals with maybe I call it a reduced starch, but they're going to need the calories. Those
Right.
they need calories. They generally tend to look a little bit more poor. So making sure that we are feeding them up to the minimum feeding rate and help their body add the calories that they need. We generally go with some product around a 20% NSC. So you're still reduced. We're not feeding them large amounts of a grain diet as well, but making sure that we are covering the basic health of the animal as well, making sure we get all the vitamins and minerals, anything we can help to combat the disease as we're going.
Yeah, because that's, if you're dealing with a straight PPID, people always talk about, these horses being, they got the fat pads, they're overweight. But most horses with pure PPID, these horses are actually losing weight. So their body
losing muscle.
Right. They've got muscle wasting. They've got decreased body condition score. And they don't absorb and process nutrients the way a normal horse would. And so it is important. Like, you kind of, if there's a pure PPID, we're actually having to feed those horses up.
Some of them we've gone to other extremes, feeding them more, elevating some of their key antioxidants, increasing their vitamin E.
Oh, now you're getting into my topic.
Because they have those special needs, and it's increasing vitamin E. Sometimes even coming in there with some fish oil is wonderful. This natural anti-inflammatory, adding fat to these horses is wonderful because it helps combat some of that muscle wasting.
Well, I've seen the same thing, especially with having those omega-3s in there, their skin, their coat, because that's another issue we have with these horses with PPID is their skin and coat just doesn't look good. You can get those omega-3s in there, get the vitamin E in the diet. That makes a big difference.
And a lot of them, if they are still animals in work, they don't feel great.
Right.
And so it's kind of one of all those conversations of, I want more energy in this animal. They're very dull. They're very lethargic. So any kind of increasing antioxidants, any of that stress off their body that we can do with those omega-3s, I always find it very valuable.
Absolutely.
Before we start going and adding any other feed substance to them. I start there and work our way. And getting a quality source of these ingredients as well.
Yes.
For a high quality vitamin E, like an all natural vitamin E, it's not going to be cheap.
No.
Right.
But it's worth it.
But it's worth it. And
what I always tell people is, like, what's not cheap? Vet care.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
And I'm just being honest about it,
Yeah.
But, and if we can prevent that with good nutrition, I think it's no different in horse health than it is in people health. Good nutrition, there's a reason your grandma said an apple a day keeps the doctor away.
And good nutrition doesn't come from fast food. And we
Right.
know that. Our dollar menu items.
Right.
That's not going to be, that's just fill.
And I always say the quality vitamin E, I can't stress that one enough, because I always like to say the most expensive medication is the one that doesn't work. The most expensive
Yes,
vitamin E is the one that doesn't work.
Yeah, that's very true.
You may pay more, but if it's working, that's a whole lot better than throwing your money away on
Right.
cheap vitamin E.
Yeah.
Same thing with omega-3s. There's good and bads out there.
Yeah.
So,
And that's a huge topic right now is omega-3s and the quality of omega-3s. There's so many different types out there. And I'd say our number one go-to is always a high-quality fish oil versus any of the others that are out there.
I'll tell you, this is kind of cool, because I didn't know there was fish oil in your product, because
And a few of them.
yeah, you don't smell it.
Yeah.
And that's a good thing,
Yeah.
because some of the fish oils are fishy.
And honestly, we use Kentucky Equine Research EO3 in any of the fish oil that we use in the specific products that include it. And we did it because sometimes adding fish oil on top of a feed, it can be tough.
Right.
But we also went beyond that, saying, hey, we do it in some of our pellets and some of our textured feed, is let's see how this actually survives through the feeding process and the manufacturing process. So we did some kind of preliminary research on that to test to make sure that EO3 is still actually viable.
And it is still viable after a pelleting process. That is pretty cool.
Yeah. So
For those of you who don't know, to make a pellet, you've got to mix it with steam, high temperature, high pressure. It's got to go through a dye. it can mess up a lot of nutrients.
A lot of nutrients. And
So that's pretty cool that it actually survives.
especially because it's an expensive ingredient. So we
Yes.
wanted to make sure that if we're adding this ingredient into the feed, that it's actually surviving the pelletizing process.
That's a very good point.
So,
Very good. That's cool. I did not know y'all done that. That is awesome.
and we worked on it this fall because we came up with a product specifically utilizing the technology behind EO3 first. Started as a product for breeding stallions.
Okay.
To help with semen quality. And it's kind of led to its own life. Found it elsewhere outside of the breeding barn. Some we've used in mares to help with uterine tone, but even in just your performance animals that we're trying to get some of those omegas into,
Right.
we've gone to utilizing this product.
Is that a feed that y'all are making now, or which
Yep,
one is
it's
that?
called Lineage.
Lineage. Okay.
It's a kind of more of a concentrated rate as well. It's at a 4 pound per day feeding rate to get a full serving of fish oil in it.
Okay.
Great for performance animals because a lot of your high performance hunters and jumpers, dressage animals, they're not necessarily needing that 6 pounds per day.
Right.
You know, they're pretty efficient at what they do. And I always say let's try to add more forage before we add more feed to them if we need to.
Oh, that's fantastic.
If we need to add more, if we're trying to add body condition, let's maximize our forage base before we come in and add more feed to them.
Yeah, because if we're trying to get them to gain, that's a big thing to me. Is like, let's go look at the bulk of your diet.
Right.
The highest quality. This is going to be the opposite of a metabolic horse, but and even on these PPID horses, a high quality forage, and that doesn't necessarily mean like how much sugar we can pack in there. High quality, very digestible, quality forage. And so adding that and then being able to
That's
add
where
some.
that alfalfa comes in.
Oh, I love alfalfa.
That's when
That's my
appropriate.
favorite. I'm always like, how do you feel about alfalfa?
Yes.
I'll tell you one of my favorite things about alfalfa too is a lot of people think it's just ridiculously high, and they think it's really high in non-structural carbohydrates.
And it's actually,
And it's actually not.
It's not.
It's not. I get the comment, it's too rich.
Or it makes horses hot.
Yeah.
Which,
No.
no.
Yeah, I
That
say
one, I'm
too rich
always
in what?
debunked
Yeah.
that one.
No, because it's the type of fiber. If I remember correctly, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the type of fiber that's in alfalfa is an A fraction fiber, so it's actually digested almost like pectins in a way. Like it's not a quick source of carbs like a starch would be, but it's a great, easily digestible source of carbohydrate.
Yeah, and then you also get the buffering effect of the calcium,
yes.
for these horses.
Calcium carbonate.
Yeah, for their any horse that has kind of this gastric upset issues, I tell folks too, I'm like, give them some alfalfa before you ride them.
Absolutely.
That horse that's kind of got that chronic ulcer case, let them have some alfalfa. They kind of get that hay mat on top, so to keep some of that gastric acid from splashing all over.
We
their
talk to
belly.
people that all the time. Like when we're doing gastroscopes, that's one of the first things we talk to them about is get that alfalfa in there,
Yeah.
get that calcium carbonate.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, so it sounds like you got some great options there because, like I said, the PPID horses, and there's another thing. Like this may be the time to keep those pastures better manicured
Yes.
for these horses. So they're going to be the exact opposite, or not the exact, but they're going to be a lot of the opposite of the insulin resistant.
And I think
horse.
it's also fair to say that it's changed. Initially, I mean, years ago, we all thought these PPID horses couldn't handle all the sugars and starches
I was
as
right
well.
there, yep.
And we all thought that way. It takes time to maneuver a ship to recognize and realize that they don't all fall under one category in the whole metabolic disease pathway of these animals, and really narrowing down what we're looking at, what we're facing, and feeding for that animal versus feeding for horses in general.
Well, let's talk a little bit about that outlier because we talked about the insulin resistant and we talked about the PPID. Well, now about the horse that gets both of them. Has that lucky straw where we got Cushing's and insulin resistance.
Throw your hands up in the air and go, ah!
I'm done.
It's for sale.
I've
Call
got
your pet.
Yeah. Yeah, I got one of those standing out in the barn now. Has both of them, so it's always a fun
It is.
road and trying to figure out how to manage those horses where you get the nutrients in them that you need, and not the ones that you don't.
And without the flare-ups, and it's
Right, that's a challenge.
it's a job in itself for that animal.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's where you have to come in again and manage, making sure you don't have the spikes in the insulin and feeding small meals and making sure that it is the low NSC, because you're going to have to fight the battles
Right.
of the insulin dysregulation. And you can't do the 2 pounds per day of a ration balancer because they might need those calories still. And so you have to come in with those really low NSC feeds, higher fat, and feed them to where you need them.
Yeah, for any of y'all that are unlucky enough to have one of those, this is one of the times I'll say you want to consult your local nutritionist. What's that?
I send them to the vet. Yeah.
We go back and forth.
I just diagnose them like that's even.
But there are plenty of groups that can help.
Absolutely.
You know, we can help, and if it's something that we don't feel comfortable with, we've got plenty of people in our back pockets that we can call and refer them on to somebody. I would definitely look at calling an actual nutritionist versus getting on your keyboard and typing and saying, this is what I have found. My horse has been diagnosed. How do I feed it?
You know, I think the only thing that's probably more frustrating than Dr. Google has got to be Google the nutritionist.
Yes.
I mean, there is a lot of stuff out there. Just find you can
AI
find
even will answer for you now.
Oh yeah.
You don't even have to ask
Yeah.
people anymore.
Yeah. You don't have to go to the forum.
Yeah, chat GPT it.
No, you don't have to join the Facebook group for My Horse Has PPID and IR. You can just chat GPT it.
Yeah.
So,
It's
yeah,
actually
those
kind of scary.
I learned about AI the other day, and I'm a little behind. Yeah, technology's not my thing, but it was it's a little terrifying.
It is.
What is out there on AI, and how much of it's not right.
Yeah.
So, yeah, find a nerd, find a nutritionist. If you've got one of those, let's go find one of those people.
There's people that get excited about it when you're like, this is what I've got. They're like, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
We can help with that.
Yeah, that's always a tough one to navigate. All right, so we've had all the fun we wanted feeding horses with PPID and IR, because that's a challenging topic. I think we hit the basics on it. Let's talk about normal diets, because I think far too often we forget, feeding normal horses. And we talk about the variances of it, but one of the things I'm a big proponent of is the scale. I love a scale.
Weighing how much?
Yes.
You and me both.
Not a weight tape.
Well,
scale the way their feed.
Scale the way
Oh,
feeds.
yeah, that too.
I can't encourage people enough. You can get them at any kitchen store with like $20.
Yeah, any kitchen
Fish
store.
scales.
You can do a fish scale is even better. I love
That'd
a
probably
fish
even
scale
easier.
because a lot of times too, you say how much hay is your horse eating? A flake,
How much is
a
a
couple
flake?
flakes,
Yeah.
A
And-
fescue flake compared to an alfalfa flake is very different.
size of the bale.
Yeah.
Your 3-stringer flakes are going to be a lot larger than a 2-stringer.
Well, and how was hay production this year? Because what I've noticed is if you're buying hay per bale, if hay prices, like that bale size can vary.
Yes.
The tensioner springs get adjusted.
Significantly. And so being able to make sure that we're meeting that minimum of 1.5% of their body
Yes.
weight, bringing in a scale, seeing how much these guys actually weigh is always fun. I know that's not necessarily available to everyone wherever they're at, but
That'd actually be a lot of fun if somebody had a scale to be able to, because that was one thing I watched y'all do in Kentucky. I mean, y'all weighed a lot of horses. And I wish we could do that on some of the farms, is actually get weights on horses.
we know where you can get a scale if you need one.
Okay.
But our fun thing is like our lesson barns, walking in when they've got, summer camps and all these kids is just guess how much the horse weighs.
Right.
It gets everybody into it.
Oh, yeah.
It'll have, your trainers are there, the kids are there. If the parents are there at the time, it turns into a whole gamble of who's right, who's wrong. You get your help. And then before you know it, you've weighed every horse, the combination of horses on there, all the kids at once, adding the dogs on there. It turns into a whole pigs or goats, depending on where you're at. It turns into a whole thing. But really recognizing the different weights in these animals. People often think quarter horses are very light because they're shorter. They are very dense animals.
Very.
They are very dense and actually weigh a lot more than what people realize. Even some of your thoroughbreds are like, oh, that's 1,000 pounds. I'm like, yeah. Sometimes we get on it and it's actually 1,400. And they go, oh.
Yeah.
So 1% of that horse's body weight, or 1.5%, is going to be way different at 1,400 than at 1,000 to make sure that the animal's getting the minimum forage requirements in their diet.
Well,
Yeah.
and being able to calculate it based on weight, so like, all right, if it's a 1,000-pound horse, 2.5% of body weight, we got 25
Yeah.
pounds to work with. You step up higher, we got more poundage we got to work with.
Yeah.
And then to me, that's where that scale in the barn, like everybody says, well, it's a scoop.
Yeah.
Nothing varies more than a scoop.
Than a scoop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, scoops can vary in size greatly.
And who's scooping?
Yes. Is that a
Just
heaping
even the
scoop?
human behind it is can vary. So some scoop, they're lazy scoop. It's like 3/4 of a scoop. Others, it's a heaping scoop.
Like a scoop and a half.
Oh, that was. I always remember my wife. She's a small animal vet, and she was trying to get the weight under control on this dog. And kept asking the guy, like, well, how much are you feeding it? Well, I feed him a cup twice a day. She's
Cups this big.
like, yeah, finally she says, bring your cup in. It's like this huge mug, right?
It's like a beer stein.
It's a beer stein he's scooping the dog food with. He's like, no, here's a measuring cup.
Like a cup.
Yeah.
Like a cup. And that's the same
Exactly.
thing. Like you see some of these scoops, and it's like, no, that's not a scoop. That's a shovel.
shovel.
But yeah, being able to weigh feeds out, I think, is
And even going to the ingredients in a product.
yes.
So a full scoop of beet pulp versus a scoop of a pellet is going to be completely different weights. And so not only the scoop is just recognizing what kind of substance it is that you're putting into the animal and the difference of the weight.
Yeah, because they all have different densities.
They all have different.
So knowing that, like when you're feeding, like you heard us talk a lot today about STAM 30, feeding 2 pounds a day. Well, that's 2 pounds, and
Yeah.
you know what 2 pounds looks like.
And we have actually little cups that
Oh, do you?
Yeah, that
Yes.
measure out 8 pound.
That would be kind of handy.
Yes, we'll
I
get you
have
some of
some.
those.
Yeah.
I have some with me.
So, and when you talk about ingredients too, that's the thing. A lot of people want to read the ingredients on the bag and say, "Oh, it's high in sugar." Like this is I'm a textured feed person. I like textured feeds, but everybody always says, "Oh, it's got all this molasses in there," and then like it's the 5th thing on the ingredient list. But let's talk about that when you're looking at a bag label.
When you make horse feed, there's a handful of ingredients that you're going to utilize in making a good horse feed. You're going to have oats, corn, barley, beet pulp, soy hulls, chaff, all your micronutrients. So anything of the first 5, those are going to be something of substance in larger quantity.
Right.
Your oils, your molasses, anything of that nature. There's only a handful that go in large quantities. Once you start getting past 3, the 3rd item, it's probably very minimal.
Right.
You start getting down into your micronutrients, where it's like here's a little dust of it. It's a sprinkle because it's a micronutrient.
Right.
And they're very concentrated. You just have to add a small amount to get to that diet that or however the feed is formulated, whether it be a 6 pound per day. You're going to have more obviously in a ration balancer, but there are only a handful of ingredients. So if you see something on the feed tag, it might be the 3rd or 4th, but it could be in there at 50 pounds per that batch, and you don't know how big the batch size is, but you
Right.
just know that it's going to be a small amount in that feed. So it's very misleading to necessarily. You do know by law, everything on an ingredient label has to be labeled from the largest amount to the smallest amount, but you don't know what those are, and those are proprietary formulas. Most people aren't going to be like, there's this much of this, but
Right.
you know how much is in it based on the amount of sugars and starches that are in the diet. You can make an educated guess whether there's a lot or a little. In your textured feeds, when you have oil on it too, that is going to increase the stickiness or the wetness of the product. So a lot of people think if you have a textured feed and you can stick your hands in and you can feel stuff in it, that it's going to have obviously high in molasses. It could be oil in there. When you get
Right.
these texture feeds, a lot of them now are very high in oil. And so that's where some of that wetness you feel in a feed could be.
Yeah, I think I did the math one time. I was trying to figure out like how much molasses was in, and I knew about how much went into a batch, and I knew how big the batch was. So I started running the math, and I was like, what can I equate this to? And I was being a good parent, so I was eating Frosted Flakes with my kids at the time, and which led me to look at how much was in there. And I was like, wait a minute, that whole bag of feed's got about the equivalent of molasses as this bowl of Frosted Flakes.
Yeah, which is
Yeah, I mean, it was hardly any.
It's a cup.
Yeah.
Beer stein.
So I think that's important too, because I get a lot of that, especially when we're talking about some of these metabolic cases. Oh, it's got molasses and I can't feed that. I'm like, well, hold up a minute.
yeah.
How much molasses is your horse actually getting? Like, if he likes it and he'll eat it, like, how much are we actually getting here?
Yeah.
So,
And small meals.
small meals.
So they're getting even less than you're thinking because you're doing it in smaller portions.
Yep.
That's a good point
'Cause
on
it-
those texture feeds.
So one thing, the ways I kind of like to end things, I always like to ask people, if you had key takeaways, let's say the only thing they heard was the last few minutes of our podcast, what would be the three key takeaways, in your opinion, that you would like people to learn from this and to really understand going on with feeding?
I know personally, pay attention to how your feed is formulated to be fed.
Okay.
Don't pick a product for these metabolically, I like to call them metabolically compromised animals. Don't base your decision just strictly on the NSC of that feed. It needs to be an NSC of the feed that needs to fit appropriately in the feeding rate that we're aiming to get into that animal. Forage quality. Don't skimp on forage quality.
No.
And consistent forage quality.
Mm-hmm.
And meal size on these animals. It takes more management sometimes, but in the end, it saves them all vet bills.
That's true. I always say, like, you know what's expensive? Laminitis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's expensive.
And there's people out there to help. Search for qualified
yes.
expertise.
Mm-hmm.
Talk to your veterinarian. See who they recommend talking to. Do your research, and make sure you're feeding a high quality product to these
Right.
animals. Quality. I don't necessarily like the term quality because I think it's overused. But know who you're working with. Know the company that you're working with. We all work as a team together to serve the horse and the owner. I work with folks, your team, your feed company, your nutritionist, that can all work together and have open conversations as to how to best serve the animal.
I always think the nutritionist is the forgotten member of the team. We talk about vets, we talk about farriers, we talk about trainers, we talk about body workers, anything you can imagine, but nobody ever talks about the nutritionist.
Yeah.
They're like the unsung heroes of the equestrian world, but they're important.
They
Like,
are.
what your horse eats is important.
They did some schooling for this.
Yeah,
they are generally well educated.
Yes. So I couldn't agree with you more. Is, remember when you're looking at these diets and you're looking at feeds, it's not just about the percentage that's in them, but the quantity you're feeding. The small meals, that was a great point. I can't stress that enough. Like, look at your management. So all those are really great things. So hope we got some good takeaways from that. Hope people learned.
I would always say too, science is always changing.
Yes.
So the way we did it 10 years ago might not be the way we do it now, and it's probably not the way we're going to do it in 10 years.
My favorite quote to use is, I think back in the 30s, I think 9 out of 10 doctors recommended Pall Mall cigarettes for pregnant women. So guess what? We learned.
We learned.
We learned. So let's don't do that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
So as things change, I'm going to keep updated.
It would be funny to see a horse smoke a cigarette, though.
It'd probably be pretty bad. They may burst into flames. I mean, good Lord, they have
They
enough.
would, yes.
Yeah.
If it could get worse, they'd find it.
Yeah.
So, well, thank y'all for being here today.
Well,
We
thank
really
you for having
appreciate you
us.
coming down from Kentucky. Doreen,
Yes,
thanks for
thank
coming in
you.
for this as well. And April, thanks for recording all this. Casey, thanks for editing everything. There's a lot of editing that goes on with these. So thank you for doing that. But we appreciate all our listeners out there. Thank y'all for tuning in. We look forward to seeing y'all next week. Take care.